Hopes for change after the deadly school shooting in Santa Fe. The governor takes new steps to push the response beyond thoughts and prayers.
We focused on trying to build bridges between sides that may not always see eye to eye.
A series of meetings at the Capitol bringing people together who rarely sit at the same table.
This conversation was a long time in coming. We needed it.
We look closer at the search for solutions to stop school shootings and why the outcome this time could be different. An historic result in the runoff election. Lupe Valdez is breaking down old barriers, but her toughest challenge could be coming in November. We'll break down the race for governor ahead on State of Texas. Hello, and thank you for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. The deadly school shootings in Santa Fe led to a historic series of meetings at the state capitol. Governor Abbott held a series of meetings looking for solutions on school safety. One of those meetings brought gun rights advocates and gun control supporters to the same table. Phil Prazen has the details.
It's not often you get Ed Scruggs from Texas Gun Sense and Alice Tripp from the Texas State Rifle Association in the same room, let alone next to Governor Abbott in the front of the same table.
We focused on trying to build bridges between sides that may not always see eye to eye.
What's new Wednesday is Governor Abbott said he backed some measures gun control advocates have pushed for. A strong public awareness campaign on safe storage and requiring the reporting of lost or stolen guns within 2 days. Right now, it's 30 days.
It's really relief. This conversation was a long time in coming.
Scruggs says this is the first time they've had a seat at the table for a discussion like this, and he believes action will come.
You know, I think there was an acknowledgement around the table that, yeah, that is an issue.
But what's still up for discussion is a red flag law that would take guns out of the hands of people with a mental health crisis.
For a red flag order for mental health, you want to be sure that there's a psychological assessment.
Tripp is the local affiliate for the NRA and says details will need to be worked out before they give their support.
It can't be based on allegations. Something has to have occurred.
But after the Santa Fe shooting, substantive talks on new gun regulations are taking place in Texas. For State of Texas, I'm Phil Prazen.
So what happens after the talks? Some lawmakers want Governor Abbott to call a special session on school safety. The governor says he'll announce the next steps later this week, but said these meetings are just the beginning.
This is a multi-step process. The first step is to have these roundtables that lead to solutions. The second step will be what you're talking about, and that is I, as governor, want to immediately announce some solutions that either I can take through the executive route or that I will suggest can be taken through the legislative route. Then the separate track will be the legislative route, and that will be up to the House and Senate working together on solutions, and this is the beginning of that process where we have members from both the House and Senate participating now, but also going forward to find meaningful solutions that Texans can agree upon to make sure that we will not lose any more students in our schools because of gunfire.
A big part of the search for solutions focuses on how to address questions of mental health. Part of the discussion included a look at programs already in place in Texas to help screen students for mental health issues and prevent violence before it happens. Wes Rappaport has a closer look.
The mental health to me is such an important component of all this, particularly early detection of a mental health issue.
The conversation included details about a Texas Tech program implemented in 10 West Texas districts that screens kids who are at risk for being violent.
We could train and give technical assistance and ensure that we have a high fidelity replication of it, and that'd go a long way.
One of the districts using that program, Rawls ISD.
If we see a student that's is at risk of hurting themselves or others, it's a great avenue and program to use, and they've helped us with some of our kiddos and to get them better.
Strauss hopes the group can work up some solid ideas to take effect soon.
If we can come up with good policy that can be implemented before the beginning of the next school year, I think that's everyone's goal in here.
Wes joins us now for a deeper dive into the meeting story. So you were there for all three governors' events. Kind of give us a sense of what the room was like.
Yeah, it was 3 very different days, Josh. The first couple of days were really policy driven. It felt like there were lots of both short-term and long-term solutions being talked about. But that third day really focused on the emotion with the victims and survivors of Santa Fe, Sutherland Springs, and Alpine. And so, having those people sharing their firsthand accounts of these incidents, being able to sit in a room and share with the governor and other elected officials and essentially call on them to take action, call on them to make those decisions was something that was really different from those other couple of days. One thing, like a lot of high schools, Santa Fe High School had a shooting scare back in February. The campus was on lockdown, no shooter in that situation, but it did scare a lot of people. And so that's something that prompted a lot of the discussion. And one student, Grace Johnson, said afterwards that several students wrote letters to the governor and other members of the Texas legislature about their safety concerns. Let's take a listen now to some of those concerns that she had.
Wrote letters on why we think this is happening and what we can do to fix this. And to us, we didn't get anything back. We didn't even get an acknowledgement. And we just wanted to know that you got those. Because May 18th came around and it finally happened to our school and we weren't surprised.
Yeah, and Johnson then went on to tell the governor that she thinks it's important to have armed security on campus, including teachers or other school officials who are allowed to carry weapons there. But she also criticized Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick's idea of requiring schools to have a single entry point, and that was something that was talked about from other people too, in terms of entries and exits, and that's something that conversation will continue.
How did the room really receive that criticism of the leadership, and how did those leaders even receive it?
It was a lot of listening. We heard some of those elected officials chime in every once in a while. They spent the better part of this meeting and these series of meetings really listening to the panelists, listening to the invited guests, listening to the students, the parents, the teachers. And I have no doubt that they'll take some of those ideas and move them forward.
We've heard before that everyone has the same goals, so do you think that there really is a sense that something's going to change this time?
I think the fact that these meetings were even held in the first place is a step forward. The governor and other elected officials seemed like they were listening, and that was the feedback that I got from folks who we talked to over these these 3 days that these meetings were held. They seemed like that they were being heard, and they felt like they were being heard. They obviously know that not everyone's going to come to a consensus on everything, but to be able to lay all their ideas out on the table and with no judgment, with a very little media presence, except for a few of us who were there, to be able to just say, here's what I think goes a long way.
Wes, thank you very much.
Of course.
People impacted by gun violence take their stories right to the governor.
If it happens in a tiny little sleepy town of Santa Fe, Texas, it could happen anywhere, and it could happen today.
They're calling for more security and better mental health care, ideas that could cost millions of dollars. How the governor is responding to questions of cost. Texas Democrats make an historic choice at the polls, picking their candidate to challenge Governor Abbott.
Together, we're going to make it happen. A stronger and fairer Texas.
But Lupe Valdez already faces an uphill battle.
This is a Republican state. She is not the strongest Democratic candidate ever to run statewide.
We'll break down the race for governor with our panel coming up on State of Texas.
I have to, for these people. I wake up every morning and think about the parents. As a father of 3, a grandfather of 2. We have to stop this.
State Senator Larry Taylor got emotional before Thursday's meeting at the Capitol. Part of his district includes Santa Fe. Senator Taylor says he's looking for ways to give school counselors in Texas more time to work with students. It's one of the suggestions that came out of the meetings with shooting survivors. Governor Abbott invited survivors and families from Santa Fe, Sutherland Springs, and Alpine to share their stories. Steffi Lee looks at the messages they shared with the governor.
Weapons should not belong in schools, and if they are, they should be decided amongst the school board.
Santa Fe students and parents meeting face-to-face with Governor Greg Abbott asking for changes.
And if anyone out there thinks that this can't happen in your school, if it happens in a tiny little sleepy town of Santa Fe, Texas, it could happen anywhere, and it happened today.
Our police officers, our school police officers, they're our best friends. You know, we wave at them in the hallway, we fist bump them. They ask us how our days are going. In a way, they're our watchdogs. We need more of them.
An Alpine High School student shot and killed herself after shooting and injuring another student 2 years ago. Alpine student Morgan Molesby says it takes time to feel comfortable again.
At first, going to school after was scary, like hearing the bells ring like caught you off guard.
And encourages Santa Fe students to lean on one another.
You just have to realize that, yes, it happened and it wasn't good, but you have to move on from it. And the teachers will help you.
Steffi Lee for State of Texas.
Many ideas came out of the meetings, like calls for more security officers, campus safety improvements, and mental health services. All of that costs money. Governor Abbott says while it's too early to say exactly how to pay for those improvements, he's confident that lawmakers will find the funds.
We do recognize that some of these proposals will require more funding. We have not talked about specific funding yet. I will suggest that I believe that there will be the commitment in the Capitol to make sure that we are smart and strategic in providing the resources that are necessary to keep our fellow citizens and our students safe.
The governor said he would take the feedback from the roundtables and create an action plan. He did not give a timeline for when he would release that plan.
A big battle over the farm bill has little to do with agriculture.
I ain't going to vote for a farm bill till we figure out what we are going to do on immigration. Plain and simple.
Freedom Caucus Republicans threatened to hold the bill hostage until the House votes on an immigration measure. What's at stake and how House leaders are trying to move the bill forward.
I will never, never, never stop working for you.
Texas Democrats make history, choosing the first Latina and the first openly gay candidate for governor from a major party. But Lupe Valdez already faces big obstacles. How fundraising and voter turnout could spell trouble in November. You're watching State of Texas.
The votes have been counted and the results are in on who will face Governor Greg Abbott this November. Former Dallas County Sheriff Lupe Valdez earned the Democratic nomination with a win over Andrew White in Tuesday's primary runoff election. Valdez is the first Latina and the first openly gay candidate for governor from a major party. She now turns her focus to November's general election, and she'll have some help from White. Both candidates say they're ready to work together moving forward.
Together, we're going to make it happen. A stronger and fairer Texas, a tolerant and diverse Texas, a Texas where the everyday person has a voice and a fair shot, just as I did.
And in addition to giving her my endorsement, I'm ready to help in any way I can to give Greg Abbott an early retirement party.
Valdez faces a tough challenge against Abbott. His campaign has more than $40 million cash on hand. Campaign reports show Valdez has around $250,000 to spend. Another challenge, getting Democrats to vote. 432,000 Texas Democrats voted in Tuesday's runoff. That's the lowest voter turnout in state history for a Democratic gubernatorial runoff. It sank below the total vote back in 1920. For perspective, less than 5 million people lived in the state back then. Now, the population tops 28 million. But state Democratic Party leaders did find a silver lining. They pointed out that voter turnout was up 130% from the 2016 state runoffs. That runoff marked the party's lowest voter turnout ever in a statewide election. For perspective on the runoffs and the race ahead, we turn to our panel. John Moritz covers Texas politics for the USA Today Network. Patrick Svitek reports on politics for the Texas Tribune. Welcome.
Good to be here.
Thanks for having us.
So Valdez won, but she faces a serious uphill battle. She is trailing in the early polls, and she's way behind on fundraising. What do you think her chances are?
This is a Republican state. She is not the strongest Democratic candidate ever to run statewide. So if anybody who's saying she's got an uphill battle is telling the truth.
Patrick, you know, the last time you were here a couple of weeks back, we talked about the governor's race, and you said that it seemed clear that Abbott wanted to run against Valdez. So did he get his wish?
I think he absolutely got his wish. His campaign could hardly contain its glee on Tuesday night, and they released a video even before she took the stage to give her, you know, nomination acceptance speech. And in the video, they kind of recap some of her struggles through the primary, including when she backtracked on saying whether she'd be open to raising taxes as governor. And so I think they got exactly the candidate they wanted, and I'm sure there's more to come as far as their attacks on her are concerned.
Yeah, where do both campaigns go now?
Lupe Valdez is basically got to do some dialing for dollars in a very big way. This is an expensive state to run in, and she is way behind in fundraising.
Right. She doesn't need to raise necessarily $40 million, but she needs to raise much more money than she's raised so far. I mean, her line has been that she's going to have the resources that she needs to compete. So far, she hasn't had the resources that she needs to compete. She barely made it out of the primary, despite having the backing of, you know, a lot of key Democratic constituencies, Democratic lawmakers, basically the Democratic establishment in Texas. And so she definitely needs to step up her fundraising game. Again, she doesn't need to go toe-to-toe with Abbott on his $40 million, but she needs to increase that number by a lot.
What were the other key races that you think are worth watching for November?
Yeah, so there were 3 congressional races. These are 3 Republican-held congressional districts across Texas, concentrated in Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio, where the Democrats finalized their nominee for the fall. And in each case, the Democrats got basically the preference of the National Party, which means these are the candidates that the National Party believes are the most viable in November. So it was a successful night for the National Party as far as that is concerned. And those were, I think, 3 areas that caught my attention beyond just the governor's race.
And it's also interesting that there are going to be a lot more women in the Texas delegation, because in some very safe Democratic seats, male incumbents are going away and females are right there ready to step in.
You know, the other big story of the week was Governor Abbott holding these roundtables on school safety. A lot of people thought that this was, you know, something to be very optimistic about. Do you think we will actually see some kind of change come out of this?
The governor promises that there will be action. He does not define what action is. In the roundtable on Thursday, there was not a consensus on whether there should be more gun safety measures or whether there should be metal detectors. It was all over the map, and that roundtable featured people directly affected by the recent mass shootings. So as long as those people don't have a united front, I think it's going to make it more challenging for the governor and his people to say, here is exactly what we need to do, and try to apply it statewide.
Yeah, I think the big question is, where do we go from here? I think the governor has made clear he wants to come up with some proposals, a kind of set list of proposals coming out of these roundtables. And then the question, and he's even acknowledged this, is how much of that can be done through the executive branch and how much is going to have to be done through legislative action. And clearly, if they want to take legislative action on some of these forthcoming proposals before January, the governor would have to call a special session. And so far, he's kind of kept the door open to that in some ways.
Is it too late to have a special session really at this point?
Special sessions are fraught with risk in a political year, so I'm sure the governor would push back on any suggestion that politics might be guiding his decision. But as a practical matter, it is getting a little bit late in the game for a special session.
All right. John, Patrick, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A battle on Capitol Hill leaves thousands of Texans in limbo.
What we're trying to do is find where the consensus sweet spot is.
A split between Republicans leaves the farm bill in jeopardy. Why the compromise to get the deal done has little to do with farms or ranches.
There's a battle over the farm bill playing out on Capitol Hill. Conservative Republicans on the Freedom Caucus are threatening to hold the bill hostage until the House votes on a Republican immigration measure. As Anna Wernicke shows us, the key to the negotiations has little to do with farms and ranches.
Josh, House Speaker Paul Ryan appears to have struck a deal with renegades in his own party who last week killed the farm bill.
What we're trying to do is find where the consensus sweet spot is.
I ain't going to vote for a farm bill till we figure out what we are going to do on immigration.
Plain and simple.
Congressman Jim Jordan says that sweet spot is immigration. Jordan and the conservative Republicans who call themselves the Freedom Caucus are insisting the House take up a vote on an immigration bill sponsored by Republicans Bob Goodlatte of Virginia and Michael McCall of Texas before they vote on the Farm Bill.
That has to happen.
The Goodlatte-McCall bill would provide funding for a border wall and establish a so-called merit-based immigration system. It would also extend protections for the so-called dreamers, young immigrants who arrived in this country as children.
And I'm happy to address DACA if we can address border security.
Congressman Tom Garrett notes that the Republican immigration bill would not provide a speedy path to citizenship for the dreamers.
It's a very difficult issue. Immigration is an issue that has a lot of passionate positions, a lot of passionate thoughts.
So in order to pass the Farm Bill, House Speaker Paul Ryan agreed to a vote on the immigration bill, followed by another vote on the Farm Bill. That's on the calendar for June 22nd. For State of Texas in Washington, I'm Anna Warnicki.
The House Freedom Caucus is relatively small with about 36 members, but their numbers were enough to derail the Farm Bill because the bill had zero support from House Democrats. Democrats don't like the bill because it includes large cuts to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, better known as SNAP or food stamps. The bill also increased work requirements, making it mandatory for people receiving food stamps to work a minimum of 20 hours a week. The cuts and changes would reduce or eliminate food stamp benefits for close to 2 million Americans. Thank you again for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. We'll be back next week to bring you an in-depth look at Texas politics.